Welcome to Sipping Sense, Sips and Swigs, a monthly edutainment podcast designed to introduce you to intriguing and unique people and innovations in the wine world. My name is Stephanie Brown, author of Sipping Sense, Uncorking the Flavors of Wine, Entertaining, and Healthy Cooking. And today I have the pleasure of having a conversation with Alicia Towns Franken. Alicia is the founder of Towns Wine Company, a wine company that aims to amplify underrepresented voices in the industry. And as the founder, she produces wines that share stories the world needs to hear. Her inaugural Inkwell edition is named after the celebrated beach on Martha's Vineyard, a place that embodies her vision of how America should be inclusive and welcoming. She's also the executive director of Wine Unify and is a mentor to many in the industry. Welcome, Alicia. It's so great to have this conversation with you today.
Oh, so great to be here, Stephanie. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. You and I have known each other for a long time. We're not going to say how long because then it might give our ages. But we've known each other for a long time. And when I first met you, you were at a restaurant in Boston. And we started to talk together about how to introduce wine to women and people of color. And I was the founder of Divas Uncorked, and you were one of our guests at one of our wine conferences. And since then, so much has changed with you. Can you just give our audience a little journey down the history of you and wine?
Absolutely. I started in the wine industry in the 90s. I'd always worked in restaurants to pay for college, and I thought I was going to do something else with my life. And then one day, someone handed me a glass of wine that literally made me stop in my tracks and gave me goosebumps. And I insisted that I needed to know more. So I remember that wine very fondly, and I thank it because it's why I'm where I am today. When we met, I was the wine director of Girl 23 and Bar, which is a Grand Awards winning steakhouse in Boston, a beautiful wine program that I helped build the foundation. The new team has taken it to a level that's just incredibly and impressive. I was the first wine director, and I had two women who worked with me. And one was my very good friend, Tini Venkatraman, who is of South Asian descent from Ohio, and then Natalie Vacher, who is an immigrant from France. And we were three women running a $3.5 million wine program in Boston,
Wow.
um, which, it was so much fun. We got to taste so many different things, but even more importantly, we got to make incredible connections in a lovely way. I left the grill in 2002. Some of my incredible friends come from that time. My son's best friend is the son of a regular customer of Grill 23 and Bar. And so we've known each other since before we were actually married to other people. So that was sort of my journey. My journey was getting an incredible opportunity from the grill to help create a wine program. And I did that for a number of years, and I left to raise my children. I think when I met you, I was just on my way out, maybe. I was
Yeah.
pregnant with my first, and I grew up in a household where someone was always at home. My great grandmother, my grandmother, and I wanted to give my kids something very similar because those women meant and mean the absolute world to me. Everything that I've learned comes from those two. My mother was very young when she had me, and so she was incredibly smart in the sense of turning me over to the matriarchs. And we all lived together. So although I'm an only child, I grew up in a household of 15.
Wow. Wow. Right. So before we move on to, I call the next phase of your journey, which is your kids are grown and now you want to go and do some more things in wine. Can you talk a little bit about if anyone is looking to actually do what you did at Grill 23. How's that changed today? Because you and I both know lots has changed. But if you're thinking about this work today, what advice would you give to someone who wants to be in that hospitality space?
Well, it really depends on who they are and where, at what level we're talking about. I'll say a couple of things. I was the only Black wine professional. TJ from Urban Grape was starting as I was leaving. And being able to work with an immigrant, someone of South Asian descent, and myself as a Black woman, diversity like you've never seen before in the wine industry. And I left and came back 18 years later to help launch Wine Unify, which is an education based nonprofit where we welcome, elevate, and amplify voices of color in the industry. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I'm just saying this to say that I returned 18 years later and there were just two
Right,
Black wine professionals. I'm like, what has happened?
right,
Not
right,
much,
right.
right? So, but to answer your question, when I was the wine director, I was not a credentialed somm. I was not a master of wine. I did not have any of those things. What I had was I was a wine professional who was tasting over 200 wines a week. I
Correct.
was reading, I was traveling, I was doing all these things. As I was leaving, there Andrea Ember became the first female master sommelier. Other people started getting this credential. Somm movies came out. Everyone wanted to be a somm. How do you do it? There's just so many different ways of being in the wine industry. It's not just about being on premise, it's being off premise and marketing and distribution and sales and media and journalism and all the things. So, how can someone break into the wine industry? Well, I think it's deciding in what aspect you want to be in the industry. And
Right.
if you want to sell wine, if you want to make wine, if there's just so many different ways, but I view credentials something that I don't have, but I think that I absolutely belong at these tables and in these rooms and creating my own rooms because there's different ways of learning. But for today, having a WSET or the Wine Spirit and Education Trust credential is sort of a tool in a toolbox.
Correct. Right.
It's part of a uniform. Like if you've got that pen, people are like, oh, she knows this, and they don't have to think about it. So getting credentialed absolutely is a way of getting into the industry, finding mentors within the industry, looking at people who are doing what you would like to do, and set up a meeting with them. There's nothing people like more than to talk about themselves.
Correct.
Right.
Right. Well, you talked about the credentials and drinking or tasting 200 wines a week. And I mean, that's the same thing that I think about when I think about my background. I owned a store. And so I had to figure out what was going to go on the shelves in the store. And so I had to taste lots and lots of wines. And I learned a lot about all of the wines from all over the world. In addition to, I learned a lot about pairing during that time. So I think credentials are important, and we all know that credentials are important no matter what industry you're in, but it's also about knowing your craft, and credentials are not the only thing to help you know your craft. So I appreciate you saying that, figure out what job you want to do and then go talk to people who are doing that job, because a lot of times they can open doors even if you don't have all the credentials that people think you might need. And there's so many different jobs in the industry. There's more jobs than just creating wine. So I think people need to really think about, where is my best skill set going to actually help me break in.
No, absolutely. I mean, within Wine Unify, we're touching every aspect of the industry. I mean, one of our recipients is a wine photographer. There's someone who's designing wine labels.
Right.
There's just really different ways of being in the industry, and it's important to know that there's a number of people who want to start brands. Well, you should also know about the business of wine. You know,
Correct.
all of these things are so sexy and glamorous and things, but oh, the business of wine is number one.
Wine making or bring a brand to market is not for the faint of heart. because it is really, really hard. And it looks easy on the outside, especially if you are already a celebrity. It looks really easy, but it's not.
It's not.
It's not. All right, so let's talk about that because you have a brand. You have the Inkwell brand that you brought to market, which is a beautiful Pinot Noir. I must say so myself. I've had a chance to taste it and buy it, and then I know you're thinking about a next varietal. So let's talk about the wine, and then we're going to end with a Wine Unify.
No, absolutely. So Towns Wine Company is a joint effort between my husband, who's incredibly cute. I always have to say these on interviews, or
And he,
he's amazing. And he comes from a very different background. He's in biotech, he's an MD, and he and I wanted to work together. And it's been great watching our kids watch us work together. And I absolutely love it. They love having a family wine brand. And so, what we wanted to do was something meaningful. And when I returned to the wine industry, I knew that I would not return to run a wine program or to sell wine. What I wanted was something that was going to impact some lives, maybe make some difference in someone's life. And that was why Wine Unify for me was a no brainer. I literally came out of retirement to help launch this. But Towns Wine Company, we wanted it to be an extension of Wine Unify in our personal lives. Um, we thought this is an incredible moment. I know so many winemakers, and I want to amplify their voices. I want to tell their stories. I want more eyes on them. The number of female winemakers of color is fairly minuscule. And so our brand is actually Towns Wine Company. Each bottling has a fanciful name. The first one made sense to me being Inkwell because we love Martha's Vineyard. It is a place that is so incredibly welcoming, and you know it well. So South Africa is where we honeymooned, and we knew our winemaker, and she's incredible, single mom, and she makes great wines. And she's looking to build her own winery, which profits from the Inkwell edition. We are donating to her. We are putting her son through enology school. He will become a winemaker. And that is how we started. We had known her for a couple of years. The wine is actually made at a friend of ours winery in South Africa. And it just made sense for so many reasons. The
are we going to have
next
another year of that?
Yeah, it's going in. We were just talking about corks the other day. It's going into bottle in a couple of months. Yeah,
Okay,
it'll
good.
be out in Q1. And we don't make a lot of it. It's only about 250 cases. And when it's gone, it's gone. And we're currently sold out, which kind of breaks my heart because it was delicious. We've retained some in the library, so we'll pull out some occasionally here and there. But our next release actually just landed into the States. We've partnered with a Mexican winemaker named Lulu Martinez, who worked in Bordeaux for 10 years, returned home to Mexico. Her grandmother had been a grape grower. Lulu makes some of the best wines in Mexico, and she is a powerhouse, a badass, all the things. And it's a Chenin Blanc. So I love Chenin Blanc from all over the world.
Me
And
too.
this wine is absolutely delicious. And it will it's heading out east and should be here in a number of days, I think. And then we'll go about selling it. And it's called Mama Mama. That's the fanciful name for that because it's Mama spelled in English, Mama spelled in Spanish, different spelling, different origin, same meaning. And
Wow.
this, just like Inkwell, is to celebrate the matriarchs who made us and who influenced us. And this particular bottling will go towards our support of the ACLU. And, you
Yeah.
know, the current state of the world, I did not know what else to do. And I think wine is a great way of having conversations, the easy ones, the tough ones, the important ones. And we just want people to know that we support immigration. and immigrants and civil liberties and diversity and equity and inclusion. So when I returned to the industry, this is exactly what I wanted to do.
Right. Well, I always say wine is the entry point to community connections and culture. And what you just described is exactly that.
Absolutely. It's wine has always been an ingredient on our table. And I want wine to be an ingredient for people. And especially with the changing in culture around wine, on ramping that next generation of wine drinkers is so incredibly important. And I think that Wine Unify is in a position to help on ramp the next generation. I mean, by including more people of color, creating representation so that people can see themselves as part of wine drinkers or as part of being in the wine life, so to speak. I think that they're not saying they don't want to drink. I think they want the industry to evolve. And I understand that. I want the industry to evolve. I think it's incredibly important that we meet people where they're at, and people shop their values. They
Right.
care about sustainability. They care about sustainability of land and of people. They want to hear the stories. They want things to be authentic. They don't care that you are a 10th generation and blah, blah, blah. Like, how does that affect their experience?
Right.
History is important, but
Right.
how are we pushing the wine industry forward?
Right. 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 So we've talked about Wine Unify, kind of weaved it all the way through our conversation. But let's officially describe what it is, who it is, so that our audience really understands how they can find Wine Unify, get involved if they want to get involved, and a little bit about your scholarships and things like that. So can you just describe a little bit about Wine Unify in an official way? Because, like I said, we weaved it through our whole conversation.
I know, because it's my life.
Yes.
So we launched in 2020, the multiple pandemics we were experiencing. I got a call from my good friend Deland Proctor, who is a luminary in the wine industry and was always sort of my little brother. And he's like, it's time to come out of retirement. And we are doing this. And then I'm like, say less, I'm in. And I joined Wine Unify. We launched in the fall of 2020. I joined as a board member and the head of mentorship. And within there was a bit of time where they said we need an executive director, and I said I wanted to throw my name in the hat, and they said you are the hat, and so I took over. Someone needed to sort of lead the ship once the world reopened and we were not all just volunteering our time. So what is Wine Unify? Wine Unify is an education-based nonprofit. We welcome, elevate, and amplify voices of color in the industry through education. We pay for people's wine spirit and education trust credential. Extra wine for study. Wine is incredibly expensive. We give people all the resources they need to succeed, not just here's this award, and we call it awards because we call it scholarships. Everyone can apply. So we have to be very careful with our language. And so it allows us to target a demographic. And so we want people to have all the things they need to succeed. So we give them extra money so they can buy wine to focus on the regions that they need to. We give them a Coravan, which is a wine preservation system, so that you can revisit. You don't have to open the bottle fully. You can revisit it over time. They get a membership to Jancis Robinson's Purple Pages. They get other things, but I think most importantly, and the reason we have close to 100% pass rate is the mentorship piece. Not only do our recipients work in the cohorts, so they're not on an island by themselves, they have, depending on how many people are in a cohort, we just have 15 new level twos. They have tasting groups, they have Zooms. Our level threes have been working together for months, and they are doing weekly calls. And the number of people who feel supported is incredible. But I think also it's our mentoring program. We do group and one-on-one mentorship, and we have the best mentors in some of the best mentors in the wine industry, whether it's a Julia Coney or a Priyanka French, who's a winemaker, Julia's media. There's Andre Mack, who's a everything, a winemaker, all the things. We have someone who's touching every aspect of the industry. And I think to have that sort of relationship with someone already in the industry is incredibly important and opens doors. The number of jobs that our recipients are getting is impressive. The opportunities that they're hearing about also is impressive. We are looking to create a network for them, something that some of us didn't have coming up in the day. Tonya Pitts and I were sort of in the industry at the same time, and she's just an incredible wine director who's still in the game. And, we were on islands. She was in California, I was in Boston. With Wine Unify, we are in about 37 states. And it's definitely one thing to have community in New York or California, there's so many, but how about Kentucky and
Right,
Tennessee? Our recipients are from all over the country, and our recipients meet up when they're in each other's hometowns. They crash on people's sofas. They come together for tastings. I absolutely love it. I love the community that is formed. And I like to say that they come for the education, but they stay for the community.
right,
And I think with One Unified Community is such an incredibly important thing, especially at a time like this, where diversity, equity, inclusion is being attacked. It's important for people to have spaces that feel comfortable and rewarding and supportive. Wine Unify is just everything I wish I'd had when I was coming up in these wine streets. Um, but I'm glad to be a part of it. I absolutely love seeing what our recipients are doing.
right, right,
Just lastly, I was just thinking that there are so many people within Wine Unify who have changed careers, social workers, attorneys, a lot of frontline workers who got burnt out and they needed joy. And what is wine if it's not joy?
right, for sure. They say that even the work that we did with Divas Uncorked in our consortium, working with the wine industry to open the doors around education and a new consumer around women and people of color in the early 90s, and the early 2000s. We're ahead of our time, but if you think about it, there's still all that work still needs to get done. The wine industry can't exist without a consumer. So what are we doing around consumer work today that still needs to get done? And wine and food was very different back when we first started. Grill 23 was not the normal restaurant back then.
Right.
And so
Right.
now you can find wine and food at just about every restaurant. The community that you talk about, having mentors, having people who will open doors and sponsor you, because sponsorship is really important. Mentors is one thing, but sponsorship is another. And you talked about mentors and sponsors kind of together. You really talked about sponsors in some aspects because opening doors and saying this person should be talked to is a sponsor. And so I think all of that is extremely important because the numbers don't lie. There's still only 2% women in this industry. And that's if I'm counting everything, everybody. And then
Yeah.
and if you think about the people of color, it's around 1%. So there's still a lot of room to grow.
You're absolutely right. And I would say this boomers are 28% of color. Gen Z, and I'm the mother of two of them, is about 50% of color.
Correct. But
Right there.
that's it.
Those numbers. How do you unwrap those people? How do you market to them without pandering, without
Correct.
being offensive? We are looking at Wine Unify to change what leadership looks like within the wine industry. We want our people not just at entry level, we want them making decisions. We want them at the C-suite level. We want them at the executive level. It's incredibly important. And there's so many qualified people out there. They're going to
I
learn all the
am.
things.
Right. I was talking online with somebody who's in marketing and communications in the industry. There's just so many jobs, and I want to bring those stories to life on the podcast as well because you might be doing that same work in another industry, but you love wine. Take that skill to the wine industry. They need it too. So
Absolutely.
it's important that people realize that can happen. And I think a lot of the internships need to flip that way as well. And so that's a whole nother conversation, but we got to get people in the door so that people see the skills of the people who are out there. I really do appreciate all the time you spent with me today. I know the new wine, the Chenin Blanc. I love Chenin Blanc. So I know the new wine is going to come out and it's going to be amazing because I know your palate. And Mama will hit the streets and I'll be the first ambassador. I love bringing all of the stories about wine and who made a specific wine to my followers. I'm just going to close on saying community, connections, and culture because that's all you do. And I appreciate that. And anytime you need me, you know where to find me. So, any closing words from you? You want to talk about where people can find you and your wine?
Sure, but can we just hype you a little a moment? You said you're ahead of your time with Divas Uncorked. I had never seen an organization like that before, and I felt supported by you guys. And I loved seeing a group of gorgeous Black women leading the way for so many people to see what wine could look like. And so thank you for that. Um, Closing words, you can find us in so many different ways. Wine Unify. Follow us online at our website, or Instagram is always great because some people might want to apply. We announced when we were releasing our awards, which is 4 times a year. Towns Wine Company, it is currently in Boston and New York, and we're looking to expand to California and Chicago, my hometown. Our launch party is in Boston is November 12th, and information about that will be coming forward. So I will send you a list of how the people can find us, and you can put it in your show notes. Thank you so much for having me. It was absolutely
You are
wonderful
so
spending time with you.
you are so welcome. You can find this podcast on Spotify, Amazon, and my website, sippingsense.com. And to all my listeners, please make sure you sign up for my weekly emails where I share picks and information about upcoming events and business tips from the industry leaders.